firing Mr. Mueller or any other of the top brass involved in this investigation would not only call into question this administration's commitment to the truth, but also to our most basic concept, rule of law.
Our new calls from both sides of the aisle in support of Robert Mueller's Russia investigation. Just heard there from the Democratic Vice Chair of the Senate Intelligence Committee, that's Senator Mark Warner of Virginia. On Friday, 40 former U.S. attorneys and GOP officials sent an open letter to President Trump warning him against firing the special counsel. All this as the Washington Post reports the FBI's deputy director, Andrew McCabe, plans to retire early next year. Trump taking a break from his vacation in Florida to tweet this: how can FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe, the man in charge, along with leaking James Comey of the phony Hillary Clinton investigation, including her 33,000 legally deleted emails, be given $700,000 for wife's campaign by Clinton puppets during investigation? FBI Deputy Director Andrew McCabe is racing the clock to retire with full benefits, 90 days to go. Wow. FBI lawyer James Baker reassigned, according to Fox News. Well, joining us now, Richard Painter, former chief White House ethics lawyer for President George W. Bush. We'll talk about the pressure being exerted upon Robert Mueller here in just a moment. But let me have you react, Professor Painter, to what I just read there from these tweets. Andrew McCabe certainly under a lot of pressure this week as he sat in front of 3 congressional hearings.
Andrew McCabe is a loyal public servant, and he has served his country well. And for him to be attacked by members of Congress the way he has been attacked over the past few weeks is unconscionable. What's going on here is that McCabe is a witness to the obstruction of justice by President Trump, because McCabe was in communication with James Comey when he was the head of the FBI, and he learned about the obstruction of justice by the president, the attempts by the president to force James Comey to swear loyalty to the president and to obstruct the Russia investigation. This is intimidation of a witness by members of Congress. And now that he is retiring, we see the president taking up the matter on Twitter, as he often does, to continue to harass this man who is not only a loyal public servant, but a material witness in the obstruction of justice case against President Trump. This is shocking behavior on behalf of the president. And I would have to say, in the Bush White House, when I was the ethics lawyer, if any White House staff member had sent out communications similar to those tweets, we would have had them fired immediately. And for the President of the United States to be doing this is a disgrace.
Richard Painter, I alluded to one of 2 letters that were fired off this week in defense of Robert Mueller. You signed one of them, along with some other Republican former members of administrations. Let me just read one quotation from that. It is critical that the special counsel be allowed to complete his review with the full support of DOJ and without interference for the benefit of the country as well as for that of the administration. What prompted you and others to write this letter?
Well, I took the lead on that letter and soliciting former members of Congress and other leading officials in Republican administrations, because it's in our common interest, Republican and Democrat alike, to have Robert Mueller continue this investigation and find out who was collaborating with the Russians, who has lied about their contacts with the Russians, and who has obstructed justice. This is not a partisan issue, although Robert Mueller has been a Republican for many years, and he was the FBI director under President Bush and President Obama. But this is a critically important investigation, and the threats to rein in Robert Mueller, to fire him, that we see from the president's allies and Fox News and some members of Congress are very, very worrisome.
You wrote a piece here with Norm Eisen, another former White House ethics lawyer here, looking at the 4 things you're worried about going forward here, including the removal of Bob Mueller. What's the one thing that needs to be done here to ensure that doesn't happen? In other words, what's something that could be done or implemented here that secures Robert Mueller's continuation in this position?
Well, I think that the members of Congress of both parties ought to make it very clear to President Trump that if he does anything to interfere with the Mueller investigation, he is going to immediately be removed from office. And that message needs to come from the Republicans as well as the Democrats. This is not in the interest of the Republican Party to have members of Congress piling on and attacking Mueller and attacking the investigation, attacking Mr. McCabe, and retaliating against witnesses. It's going to be terrible for the Republican Party in the 2018 elections. It's very important for both parties to make it very clear to the president, hands off Robert Mueller.
Does Bob Mueller need to say something about this? He's been silent throughout. We heard from some guests earlier on the program that that's wise. It's wise for him to keep quiet as all of this unfolds, let the indictments do the talking. At some point, does he have to defend the integrity of his investigation?
I think he's defending the integrity of the investigation by doing the investigation. We need to have people who are actually doing their jobs in Washington instead of tweeting and talking about it and attacking other people. Robert Mueller is doing his job. He's doing it well, and he's not going to sit there shooting his mouth off or tweeting or anything else. When you hear from him, it's going to be an indictment or something else like that.
Last question here, Richard Painter. You are part of CREW, Citizens for Responsibility and Ethics in Washington, filed suit against this president using the emoluments clause. A judge ruled that you didn't have standing. Case. Let me just quote the statement here from CREW. While today's ruling, this was issued Thursday, is a setback, we will not walk away from this serious and ongoing constitutional violation. The Constitution is explicit on these issues, and the president is clearly in violation. Our legal team is weighing its options and will soon lay out our decisions on how to proceed. Help us understand what's next here. If that judge rules you don't have standing, what needs to happen here when it comes to the president and his properties?
Well, the court in New York felt that CREW, our organization, was not the proper plaintiff to bring a lawsuit such as this one. We're going to appeal that ruling. There are two other lawsuits pending, one brought by members of Congress and one brought by the Attorney General of the State of Maryland and the District of Columbia. They have very different standing arguments, and those are in front of other courts. No court has ruled on the substance of the complaint, which is that the president is in violation of the Constitution. And in all three suits, the plaintiffs feel very strongly that the president is in violation of a critically important provision of the Constitution, which prohibits any United States government official from accepting profits and benefits from dealings with foreign governments without the consent of Congress. And that's a very, very important provision of the Constitution. We hope that, we expect that the courts will enforce it, and that also Congress will do its job of enforcing the Constitution, which isn't what's happening so far.
Richard Painter, thanks so much as always. Joining us from Minnesota, Richard Painter there of the law school.